the United States of America. Unity and oneness is what we're made of. One nation under God, it's plain to see. We're showing the whole world what a country should be. United we stand in America, hand in hand in America. Together as one in a land that we love. United we stand in America.
Good morning, everyone out there. Welcome to Changing Times. It is Wednesday, May the 6th. You can kind of see I've got a vest and a long sleeve shirt, and Marcia, our guest, has a sweatshirt on today, Alzheimer's sweatshirt.
My swag.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a little cool. I think I woke up this morning and wasn't feeling very good about 4:30 and stayed up, and about 45 degrees when I woke up this morning, and so a little cool in Southwest Missouri, but we're proud to be here today. We are live at the ACTS Group headquarters, Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri, and this is show number 290. So over 5 years we've been doing this show, and so one of the first things I want to say is I'm still waiting for some people. I've had 2 calls just this last week myself because these people that know me in the area, and they listened to our show last week. We talked on suicides. You need to go back. All our shows are put in our library, and you can go back very easily and watch our show on suicides last week. Louis, Michael, Dennis, and I did that show. And this is another show. We're going to be talking about updates on Alzheimer's, new testing, new treatments, why it's so important to do early diagnosis. We're going to Marcia is the expert. She is the expert on Alzheimer's, and we'll talk about that. But we've got sometimes to talk about things that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about suicide. And I know that for a fact because I had a cousin many years ago when I was young, growing up, that committed suicide. And it divided our family into 2 groups. And it was a very sad, different funeral than all the funerals I've gone to ever since that time. Okay? And a lot of people never even let somebody know that somebody's committed suicide, and many times there's no funeral for them, and it's just all kinds of things. Well, here's a disease, a progressive neurological disease that happens more often to older folks. Seems like a lot of things, Marcia, happens to to older folks.
I know about a lot more diseases than I used to.
Yeah, we're almost like an expert, even maybe sometimes smarter than the doctors on some of the diseases that we get to have. So us older folks are pretty tough sometimes because of all the things that we have to put up with. But our guest today is Marcia Rauwerdink, and you've been on our show before, and you are the go-to person that knows about Alzheimer's. I mean, how many years? 25 years?
Close to 20. I've been a volunteer.
Because I know you got an award.
Yes.
Just a year or 2 ago. Yeah. And I saw that. I was reading about that, and I thought, well, you're well deserved. You are a difference maker. We had Dennis and I. We don't have anybody on this show unless they're a difference maker, and you really understand. And because your mother had Alzheimer's,
yes, she died of Alzheimer's in 2005.
2005, and my mother died of Alzheimer's, and we saw personally, firsthand, very close, intimate, what that does to a person through the process, from the beginning to the end. We saw that. And one of the things that why I wanted to talk about Alzheimer's, and I called Marcia today, was I'd had someone down at work at the courthouse that has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And they're still working. And it's probably fairly early, but we don't, I don't know how the doctor really knows how long that person's had it. But it changes your life. It changes your life, and there is no cure for it. We're still praying and working and collecting money and working hard trying to get a cure for it. But we're going to hopefully take pencil and paper today, and hopefully you'll learn something about Alzheimer's that you might be able to help save and prolong someone's life by diagnosing it when you see things happen. Because when I think back about my mom, there's no one in our family that we knew of had Alzheimer's until my mother. And so my brother and I, because he lives in Little Rock, he wasn't there very often. And sometimes maybe that's better than me seeing my mom every week, seeing her several times a week, because you just kind of keep seeing things, but you don't really realize what the change is. And I think it was my brother that actually mentioned the first time about my mom's memory. And because, they would come up maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And so he notices something before I did. And then you kind of say, well, that's just, as we get older, we sometimes are a little slower mentally, and you forget things. I mean, if I had Alzheimer's the first time I lost my keys and couldn't find my car keys, I mean, think about all the things that you need every day, but you kind of misplace them. Is that Alzheimer's? No, it's probably not Alzheimer's in your 30s or 40s, but generally Alzheimer's happens in the 60s. But it can happen. Early onset Alzheimer's can happen at an earlier
As early
age.
as 30. We actually had a young woman in Springfield who was 21.
21.
Yeah.
Just think about that. And obviously, the sooner you know, the medications that we have, and Marcia's going to be talking about some of those, can actually prolong the more severe stages and things like that, and that's definitely what you want to do. Well, Marcia had sent me an outline, and I thought that was really good. One of the first things we want to talk about is the early detection of Alzheimer's, and it's actually the most prevalent kind of dementia.
Yes.
So people have dementia, but they don't have to have Alzheimer's.
Right. 2/3 of cases of dementia are Alzheimer's. You have to think about dementia as a big umbrella. And the umbrella has several types of dementia underneath it, but Alzheimer's is about 65% of the cases of dementia. So it is the most common, and it is not a normal function, not a normal thing that happens with aging. It truly is a disease of the brain.
And it's progressive,
Yes.
and once you get it, it continues to
Yes.
progress.
Yes.
And
You're not going to get better.
so your body's, some things we can fight off ourselves.
Right.
Our body can fight it off. God's got that system, but this is a disease that you can't, and I think it's, what is it, a buildup of protein plaques in your...
Buildup of what's called
Amyloid?
beta amyloid plaque, which is a protein. That's the main one. There's also another protein called tau, which also contributes to. So what happens is with the buildup of this protein, it's sticky, and it causes the neurons in the brain not to be able to communicate with one another. And that's what starts to cause the issues with memory, starts to cause the issues with communication, not being able to come up with the right word, because those neural connections that you relied on your whole life now are starting to not be able to talk to each other.
Wow. And I always thought, I was thinking one day, when you're talking about that sticky and the plaques that kind of gets on top of your brain up there, the brain's on the right and left side and everything. And man, wouldn't it be neat if you had a spray thing that they could stick in your head and knock all that spray off.
Someday.
I had to power wash off my driveway. Dennis knows it because I had an oil leak. I had an oil leak in my car, and I didn't know what it was to begin with, and then I had to have it power washed off with chemicals to get rid of that oil. And so, man, wouldn't it be neat if you could just spray it off? And so, early detection. What's some of the things symptoms? Let's talk about symptoms first.
Okay.
Things that we could watch out for that most people are going to exhibit, and then let's talk about blood. That we got a new blood test and things. Let's talk about some of that stuff.
We've got another new blood test. So, I'll talk about what to look out for.
Yeah. Okay.
One of with Alzheimer's, and I'm specifically talking about Alzheimer's here, one of the first and most common symptoms that people see is somebody repeats the same question over and over again. And you tell them the answer, and they ask the question again. And you tell them the same answer. And looking at them and going, I just told you that, is not helpful, because they don't remember that that they just asked you that question. And so if somebody asked you a question 4 or 5 times in a row and you give them the same answer, that's really a very strong sign. Another very strong sign is loss of short-term memory, like missing appointments. There was a professor in St. Louis, and it was her students who picked up on the fact that there was something wrong, because she was missing her classes, and that was not like her at all. And she wasn't returning term papers, and that wasn't like her at all. So her students picked up on the fact that there was clearly something wrong, and they went to her and talked to her about what they were observing and suggested that she probably should get checked out by a doctor. That's really the first sign when it comes to Alzheimer's. And other signs are paranoia. Somebody broke into my house, but nobody actually broke into your house. Other signs are inability to do routine tasks that you used to be able to do. If you have a parent who always balanced their checkbook every month and never had a problem doing that, and now they can't do it anymore. If you go into their house and you find a stack of unpaid bills, or you find a stack of checks that have not been deposited in the bank like they normally would have, those are all signs. If you can't follow simple directions anymore, let's say you used to always play Monopoly, and now you don't remember the rules, and a family member picks up on that. So all of those things are typical signs of a likelihood of Alzheimer's.
Marcia, it was kind of funny. My mother paid her bills after my father died. He died about 10 years before. My mother lived about 10 years without my dad, and so she paid all the bills. Actually, she paid all the bills anyway, but what was funny was towards the end, she had her own little way to do. She didn't want anybody to help her with the bank, so she was paying all her bills. Well, she paid the IRS one year. She paid taxes. They had to pay taxes, and she sent the form in that the accountant did, but she didn't send a check. And so she got a letter from the IRS. I checked her mail once a week. When I'd come over, I'd look at all her mail, see what she had. And she said, yep, I took care of that. I don't know why I got that letter. And so I think it's 2 or 3 weeks after that, got that letter, I was thinking, I think I need to check her checking account book, her little ledger book. And so I looked, and inside that was neatly her IRS check. She had written it out, but she forgot to mail it. It was inside the cover of the checks.
That's a classic example.
So she did remember to send in her because they didn't send it in for her. She sent it. She went home and wrote the check out. but she goes, "Oh my, I must have forgot," and so those are those things that happen,
Yes.
isn't it?
And that's how come typically it's a family member that picks up on something like that. But like the example I used about the college professor, it can also be students. It can also be people that you work with. I know that, we have two huge healthcare systems here in Springfield, and from time to time, I'll hear a story about somebody who was always paying incredible attention to detail as a nurse or a nurse practitioner, and their coworkers pick up on the fact that they're not performing the way they used to. They're forgetting to enter data. They're forgetting to do some of the really important tasks that have to be in the patient's record. And so it's those kinds of things. It can be anybody that can pick up on what is out of the ordinary for behavior for the individual.
Marcia, and that's a good example. I've got an example of a good friend of ours that was a radio salesman, marketing salesman, and he had to quit his job in his early 50s. Very successful. He was number one in sales for the radio station in Springfield. But he would talk to the client, to the business, and they would order advertising for a certain date to start. And then they started noticing after he'd been working several years, but all of a sudden the ads weren't getting placed. They weren't getting placed on the radio, and they would listen. The owners of these companies would start listening to the radio, and they wouldn't hear their ad, and they knew their ad was supposed to be on that day. And so they would ask him, and he thought that he had done it. He said, "Well, I've turned it in, and I'll check." But sometimes he would forget to even check. So when they called the owners, they found out that those ads had not been placed. And so that's another sad part of Alzheimer's, is that something that you've been doing forever, because he is probably a 25-year veteran of the radio business, and here he was not able to remember. He got the ad, he got the account, he got the contract, but he forgot to send it in, to process it.
Yep.
So that's sad.
It's very sad, and it's very hard to watch.
Right.
Because this disease is not only bipartisan, but it does not discriminate. And so really, really, really intelligent people like my mother get this disease. It can affect anybody. And it's really hard to watch someone who was very good at their job no longer be able to perform normal tasks. So it's a hard journey to watch.
So what kind of tests are we looking at now that we can maybe diagnose earlier?
This is the really exciting part. I have to go back to just a little bit of history. Up until a year ago or so, the way that we diagnosed Alzheimer's was either through a spinal tap, where they measure the amount of this beta amyloid in the cerebral spinal fluid, or something called a PET scan, which they inject a radioactive substance in, and they can actually take pictures of your brain, and the picture of the brain can show where the beta amyloid plaque is and where the tau protein is, and they can determine where you are at in this process, or if you're there at all. Maybe your brain is perfectly normal. And the most common diagnostic tool, although it's not as reliable as a spinal tap or a PET scan, is just a cognitive test that your doctor can give you. It's about 20 questions. And you hear about this from time to time, people talking about having to be able to draw the hands on a clock to show when it's 11 o'clock, the ability to draw a rectangle, the ability to recognize that that's a picture of a camel, those kinds of things. But as of last May, the FDA approved a new blood test that can and does tell the doctor where you are at in this process or continuum of Alzheimer's dementia. And again, this particular blood test at this point just tells you about whether or not you have Alzheimer's. But it was approved last May. And what was so exciting about it when it was approved was that I no longer have to drive to St. Louis, to Washington University, or to Kansas City in order to get a diagnosis. It's a simple blood draw, just like you go down and get your blood taken to measure your cholesterol. It's exactly the same thing. It's no different. It's just one more tube of blood. And the people who are able to, the scientists who are able to read these results, can then tell you whether you have mild cognitive impairment, whether you may be in early stage Alzheimer's, middle stage, or unfortunately maybe late stage, depending on when somebody takes action and says, you're not okay and we need to get you checked out. But the beauty of this test is its accessibility. And so this is now available to people in rural areas as well as cities that have research facilities like Washington University. And that's very, very exciting because that kind of accessibility just wasn't there before. Now, what's happened in the last year since that first blood test was approved is now a second blood test has also been approved, and this blood test was actually developed at Washington University in St. Louis. So we now have two blood tests that are available for people to be able to be diagnosed without having to go through a spinal tap and without having to have a PET scan. And so early detection has become much easier and much faster. You don't have to wait in line to get an appointment at a hospital in Kansas City in order to get a diagnosis. Your physician can prescribe this blood draw. There are a couple of caveats. One is you do have to be 55 or over, and you have to be exhibiting some kind of behavioral symptoms that indicate to the doctor that, yeah, we probably better check this out, right? So, somebody who's 25 and is perfectly fine and acts perfectly fine just can't walk into their doctor and go, give me the blood test. They don't qualify according to the rules that the FDA is insisting on right now. But now we have two blood tests and we've got more coming. And so it's a very, very exciting time because early detection now is possible and without having to drive 4 hours, depending on where you live. And early detection is really important, and I'll often get pushback on that, where people say, well, why should I get tested for this disease? There's no cure. What's the point? The point is that you can decide you don't want to get tested, and everybody's an individual. Some people take that position that, look, if there's no cure, I don't want to know. But the beauty of getting tested and finding out, hey, maybe you are perfectly normal and maybe it's something else. Maybe it's that you are very low on vitamin B12, which happens with the elderly a lot. Maybe you are taking conflicting medications, which happens with older people as they add on more and more medications for different different diseases, but those things can be taken care of if the doctor checks you out for, does your blood work and all, and maybe it is Alzheimer's. And if it is Alzheimer's, the earlier you discover it, you can make plans. You can make plans and you can decide, here's how I want to handle my finances moving forward. Here's who I want. Here's the person that I trust to handle my affairs when I'm no longer competent. And you can get a durable power of attorney in place while you're still competent to do so. If you wait until you're in middle stage or, heaven forbid, late stage, somebody else is going to make those decisions for you. And that's not really what you want. The other thing that is very, very important about early detection is we do have the 2 new medications that Lynn referred to early in the conversation. The first one was lecanemab, and the second one is donanemab. And those 2 medications, they're currently infusions, and I can talk a little bit about what's happening on that path, but they're currently infusions, but you only qualify for those 2 treatments, one of those 2 treatments, if you are in mild cognitive impairment or early stage Alzheimer's. If you have waited and moved on into middle stage, you are no longer qualified to receive one of those medications that definitely has been proven. They have been approved by the FDA, and they do slow the progression of the disease, and you can maintain your quality of life for a longer period of time. And
See, Marcia, I think that's the important part.
It's really important.
Is your quality of life. Once your quality of life is not there anymore, then I'm ready to go to heaven. But before that time, you want to have the best quality of life that you can have. And what Marcia's saying just now is that early detection. And then if you are diagnosed, then you start taking either the infusion medications or oral medications. The rest of the story on this gentleman I was talking about that was a radio advertising salesman was because they diagnosed it early, because these people told the radio station about what was going on, he started on medicines right away, and within a year or so, he started working part-time again, and they knew what to watch out for.
Right.
And because they knew what appointments he had, and so they didn't miss any ads after that, but he was able to still work for some years. And so you want to be able to take that medication sooner than later.
And or one of the other things, and I'll talk a little bit about it, we have also learned through a lot of research in the last 10 to 20 years that modifying your lifestyle to include healthy habits when you can, and I do a whole education program just on that topic alone, is just as important to prolonging your quality of life. So things as simple as getting enough sleep, eating right, and I'm not talking about going on a diet, I'm talking about adding an apple a day, adding a vegetable a day, just minor lifestyle habits.
Good nutrition.
Yeah, good nutrition, and challenging your brain. As I like to always say to people, jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles are great, but challenging your brain to learn something that you don't know how to do today rebuilds those neurons, just like if you were in elementary school again. And that really helps to prolong the quality of life when you're challenging your brain. Maintaining social connections is very important. And those kinds of things we now know have an equal role in prolonging the quality of life, even if you have mild cognitive impairment or early stage Alzheimer's. And we believe the association and all of its medical researchers believe at this point in time that ultimately, when we talk about a cure, ultimately we think a cure is going to include healthy habits and some type of medication breakthrough to actually have what we call a cure today. We think because those things just they work together, and so early detection is really important for all of those reasons, especially because you have a say-so in how you're going to spend the rest of your life, if you will, where you may want to live. For example, you still are competent to say, hey, let's go tour some facilities, and I'd be comfortable in that facility, but I wouldn't be comfortable in that facility. You still have a say-so.
So a lot of decisions can be made.
Yes, early.
So, Marcia, I know some of the oral medications has been on the market for
Yes.
a while, but these new infusions is most of the people are going to be Medicare age.
Yes.
And so that's good. Seniors have Medicare. At least right now, we still have Medicare and Social Security. What about insurance? Is these insurance companies, a lot of times, they don't want to cover brand-new medications. They make you wait a while.
The reason that 2 years ago, when we were in Washington, D.C., and the Medicare had not yet agreed to cover these new treatments to prolong the disease, to prolong the quality of life
right.
of while you have this disease. We protested. We went to hearings on Capitol Hill, and we did finally get CMS Medicare to agree to cover those medications, which was wonderful. And we're now facing a sort of a similar challenge, which is one of the things that we're going to talk about. But the reason that getting Medicare to agree to cover those medications is what happens typically is private insurers usually follow the lead
The
of
big
Medicare.
companies, Medicare.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's very important to first get Medicare to sign on, because then the private insurers usually follow the lead of Medicare.
So, Marcia, folks, this is why Marcia, when I started off the show, why I said Marcia's a difference maker. She didn't just worry about it. She knows about what happened to her mother, and she knows what's happened to friends. But she goes to Jefferson City all the time, works on state bills that have to do with Alzheimer's. Now she goes to D.C. and works up there with Congress and with advocates, making sure that the people are taken care of and that we're doing the right thing in the treatment of Alzheimer's. And so that's why, another thing, you're a difference maker. I would challenge people, because I'm still in government too, and what I see is a lot of people complain. They complain about the state government, city government, federal government. They complain, but you got to do more than just complain. You need to drive up there. In your case, maybe fly up there to D.C. You gotta pay attention, and then you gotta learn, and then you gotta go tell the senators and congressmen what's going on and why it's so important. They have a lot of issues going on in their mind. And the guys that, I think the ones that are the loudest, that come the most often, are the ones, honestly, as a state rep for 8 years, that I paid a lot of attention to the people that came up every month compared to once a year to see me. Okay, there was people that came up all the time, kept it in the forefront. There's so many people pulling every way and wanting their bill, their item taken care of. So that's what you do.
That's what I do. I'm leaving May 31st.
Yeah, so there you go.
To go to Washington.
She's leaving again this month to go to D.C. to try to help all the people in this country.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that very nicely segues.
Yeah, let's go into the legislation.
We talked about early detection and why it's important, and the number one priority when we go to Washington this June, I'll be on Capitol Hill on June 2nd, is we have an act that's in front of the House and Senate committees right now called the ASAP Act. And yes, it means as soon as possible, but the ASAP Act actually stands for the Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act. And this gets back to, it kind of circles back to where we were with the approval by Medicare of covering the two new drugs that delayed the progression of the disease. We had to convince Medicare to cover that and why it was important and why it was really significant for people to, I'll use a real simple example, prolong their ability to stay home so that they can watch their granddaughter get married. I mean, we're not talking
Sure.
about little stuff here. We're talking about really important things.
Mm-hmm.
Being able, here it is, the first week of May, watching your granddaughter graduate, which I'm going to get to do. And so it's things like that. If you
Yeah.
can prolong the person's ability to still be independent and still maintain their competence, if you will, as long as possible, then they're able to have a better quality of life. So the reason the Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act is so important is because we had the first blood test approved last May, and now we have a second blood test. Medicare has not yet agreed to cover those blood tests for early detection of the disease. And we need to make that happen. And the ASAP Act that was introduced in the Senate by one of our biggest champions, Susan Collins from Maine, is designed to tell and allow the Secretary of Health, when we have a new test for early detection, that they can automatically tell Medicare, you will cover this test because it's important. Early detection is very, very important. And so when we get these first two blood tests and then whatever new early screening tests come behind that, we want them to be able to be covered by Medicare so that people don't have I'll call it a financial reason to say, no, don't do it. I can't afford it. So that's what we are going to Washington to advocate for. I've been advocating for it here in district meetings with our local district legislative staffs.
So it's not approved by the state
Yep.
Medicaid department yet
No.
either?
No,
Yeah.
no. So just lost my train of thought.
How expensive is it?
We stay away from that because there's a huge range, right?
Okay.
It depends on who's doing the test. It depends on which lab is doing the analysis. It can be in the range of $400 to $1,000, but that's as narrow as I can.
Medicare's going to decide how much they're going to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
And
They always
so-
do.
And so, but
yeah.
you know, at least it's not something that's, some of these injections are 50,000
Right.
and things to keep somebody alive and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
even more. And so that really gets to be a problem. But something like this, and
Is
you could prolong
very-
somebody's life a year,
Yeah.
5 years,
It's
quality
great.
of life, 7 years. I mean, my gosh.
Well, and
So-
compare that to the cost. Compare keeping someone at home longer because their quality of life and their ability to make their own decisions is lengthened. Compare that to the cost of taking them out of their home and putting
Oh,
them in
yeah.
an $80,000 a year facility.
Sure.
And so, this is an emotional disease. It rips families apart
Yeah.
because people disagree whether mom's okay or mom's
Mm-hmm.
not okay. But at the end of the day, you hate to reduce everything down to numbers, but at the end of the day, this is actually a savings because the longer you can keep somebody in their home,
Right.
it's much less expensive for every
Right.
single taxpayer in this country.
This is an odd disease because I use my mother as an example. She never looked like she was sick. So for a long time, she could dress herself. She could fix her own breakfast, lunch, dinner. She would fix us fried chicken on Sundays. She would have Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving dinners, Easter dinners, lunch. A whole family, 15, 20 people would come to her house and we'd all bring something, but she really was in charge. But even after she lost enough mental capacity that she couldn't fend for herself and we had to put her in a nursing home, she still didn't look sick.
You don't look sick.
She looked just like she did. She might have lost a little weight, but she still looked like your mother, and you couldn't tell that she was sick. But she just didn't have brain function anymore, and so it got to the very end before we took her to a nurse home, and she started falling at home all the time. So you have a caregiver 8 hours a day, then 12 hours a day, and then more, and then we tried to rotate some of our family, but eventually it was 24 hours a day. But she got to the point where she'd go into the kitchen, she'd walk into the kitchen by herself, and she'd look around, and she'd go to the stove, and she didn't know how to boil water. She didn't know how to make hot tea. She didn't know how to make a cup of coffee. She'd go over to the toaster, and she'd look, and she'd looking around. Well, in one cabinet was the loaf of bread. But I noticed that's what she was looking for. And then she couldn't figure that out. And she'd just stare at that toaster, and couldn't make a piece of toast.
And it's that blank look. I call it the lights on, nobody home look that you can pick up on with these individuals when you've been around them and when you've had personal experience with this disease. So the status of the Screening and Prevention Act right now is it's working its way through committee. We're going to be advocating for more co-sponsors in the Senate and the House. At this point in time, we're very pleased. We have 19 senators that have signed on as co-sponsors of this bill. So about 20% of the Senate already has co-sponsored.
Is Senator Kennedy one of them? Do you know?
Yes.
I think he's a smart man.
Yes,
So,
he is one of them. Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. Yes, he has signed on.
Well, if you could find senators and congressmen and women that have experienced that in their own family.
Yes, they're very strong champions.
Then they will be champions of the cause.
And that's one of the reasons Susan Collins is such a champion because she's lost 3 or 4 family members.
See, I was going to ask you because if that happens to you, then you'll know. You'll know why it's important. You'll know why she's doing what she does. Okay?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be pushing for more co-sponsors. Why is that important? This is one of the things that I love about doing what I do because I learn something every day, every month, and every year. I learn something about the legislative process. But it's really important because if we can get a groundswell of co-sponsors, then to the rest of the House and the rest of the Senate, this looks like a no-brainer. It's easy to get it voted for on the floor once you've got close to a majority of co-sponsors. And so we're going to be asking our senators and legislators to co-sponsor this bill. Right now, neither one of the senators in Missouri has co-sponsored the bill. I'm working on it. And our local House member has not co-sponsored it yet either, but that's one of the reasons that we're going to go make these congressional visits. We do have, at this point, co-sponsors all the way from Alaska to Maine, down to Louisiana, Florida, and California. So we've kind of got the whole country covered at this point, but we have this sort of, I'll call it the midsection of the United States where we've got a little bit of a gap.
Let me know. We'll if when you get up to D.C. and you find out that our local people are not going to do that, we'll write letters. We'll have a letter campaign. I can make phone calls. And what can we do? Tell the people what they can do.
You hit the nail on the head. One of the things that they can do, I have this here, which you can't do, but we do email blasts. They can go to alz.org and look up the ASAP Act. Look what Dennis is going to do.
Yeah.
And they can look up the ASAP Act, and they can contact their senator and their representative and say, this act is very important, and I want you to either co-sponsor it, or when it comes to the floor of the House or the Senate, to make sure to vote for it.
Yeah, so folks, this is something that you can do today.
You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to go to Washington.
Yeah, you can do it today. You can do it this week. If you do it before this group goes up to D.C., that would actually even help them more, because all of a sudden they're already going to have that in their brain, knowing that people are thinking about this, wanting that, needing this, and so you can make a difference. You can be a difference maker too, and it's really important. This is a nonpartisan bill. There are so many things today that divide us. Unfortunately, we have too many things in this country that divides us. Think about this. This is something that shouldn't be dividing us. This should be something that's unifying us. We can do this because it's a positive thing to help all people, and all of us older people that turn 60 or 62, 65. That's the age that you start seeing Alzheimer's. So we're more people our age than there are younger people at this point. The population is still aging every year, so that means Alzheimer's is increasing every year. So we've got the numbers. Let's help each other out, because you may get it yourself someday.
Thank you, Dennis.
So, so look at that. You can see that online. You can see how to contact people, and so we really appreciate it. Well, I'm going to talk about our sponsors, and I'm going to let you give our last words. So Brad Pistow is a certified fiduciary financial planner located in Ozark, Missouri. And he has written 2 books, Safe Money Matters, Bulletproof. And they are best-selling books on retirement planning, Amazon, and you can buy them at bookstores everywhere. You can actually get those books if you will call 417-581-9222, 417-581-9222. Now, he's located in Ozark, Missouri. Now, I know what you're saying. You're going, well, I live in 49 other states. I don't live in Missouri. Well, that's okay. He's actually licensed in 18 states. He knows associates in all 50 states as he goes around and travels all over the country and talks about retirement planning. So he can hook you up with people in other states and make sure that you have someone that will take care of you. Being a fiduciary, he means that he's always going to put your interests first, not his, yours, okay? And I use him. A lot of my family members use him. A lot of my business associates, friends that I've been in business, government employees, people have used him. He is very, very busy. He's a very good person. He's a strong Christian person. And they have all kinds of things in their office. It's called Ozarks Insurance Group, used to be called Trinity Insurance, and they sell Medicare programs. His son is a stockbroker, and he can help you invest in any kind of stock or bond or annuity or anything. So you got it all covered. And what I like about Brad Pistow is he has plans for everybody where you will never run out of your life before you run out of your money. I know a lot of us seniors worry today about running out of money before they run out of their life. What will I do? What will I do? Well, you don't have to worry about it if you use somebody like Brad Pistow. Okay, the second sponsor is Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. They have been longtime sponsors, just like Brad Pistow. They were my radio sponsors for 7.5 years, and they also over 5 years here with this show. So I know these guys. I've bought several cars from them. I used to buy Jeeps, Grand Cherokee Jeeps, Summits, top of the line. I bought 3 of them from them. And now I just bought a Kia Sorento last Labor Day. And you notice that my co-host is not here today, and she's still in Jefferson City. I think she has 2 weeks left, and then she'll be 2 or 3 weeks left, and then she'll be back. Thank goodness. But she just bought a Nissan Rogue. She just bought a brand new Nissan Rogue, and so we know a lot of people. One of our Dennis, one of our guests that we have here once or twice a year, husband and wife that do marriage counseling, they have 3 cars from Nissan and Kia. So
I'm going there after the show.
And you're going there after the show. So you go, well, I don't live in Missouri, so how am I going to buy a car? Well, let me tell you what. They sell cars to people in 8 states. So there must be several reasons why people buy from them. But I know service is one. I know price is one. I know the convenience is one. They'll do all kinds of things that you haven't experienced in other car dealers. And so that's why I buy from John Whittaker and Aaron Swanson, the sales manager. John is the CEO, owner of the company. And honestly, just a great company. Call 417-882-3838, 417-882-3838, and they will get you, Susan will get you to the right person, okay? So, now, last words, what do we need to tell people?
We need to tell people that it's very easy for them to, pull up what their congressman's profile online and send a quick note encouraging them to please support the Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act. That's very important. This is a very popular, as Lynn mentioned, this is a nonpartisan issue. We just recently completed a poll. 90% support Medicare coverage of these new early detection blood tests. This is a no-brainer. And so we really want people to, like I said, you don't have to get on an airplane and go to Washington. You can take action, as Lynn said, right here, right in your home, wherever you are, no matter what state you are in, by pulling up your senators and just sending them a 2-sentence note saying, please support the ASAP Act. So that's what everybody can do to help. And the other thing is to please educate yourself to the extent that you can. If you go to alz.org, there are there's more information on the warning signs, more information on treatments than even I could read in the rest of my lifetime. But there's lots of help. Please use the search filter because there's so much information there online. And the other thing, when I talk about education, I'm a community educator as well as an advocate. And, get educated on this disease and do not be afraid to talk about it. One of the things that we still have to overcome is the stigma of this disease. People don't want to go to their next door neighbor and admit that mom or dad who's living with them has dementia, and you need to know, because if neighbors don't know and your loved one is out wandering, they don't know to let you know
Right.
that we have a safety issue.
Right.
And so it's really important to talk about it. It's not a disease that has anything bad. It's so common. In fact, it's so common. Lynn talked about the numbers going up. 1 in 3 people over 80 have Alzheimer's. 1 in 3. That's a huge. It's a huge number, and
See, that's not a good number for me because I'm 77, folks, and I don't think right now.
You're
my
fine
memory's
right
still
now.
pretty good. But dadgum, in 3 more years, that's something to look forward to. No.
But that's where the healthy habits
Yeah.
and the lifestyle comes in. People who walk, exercise, eating right. All of those things all contribute just the same as medication. And there are medications that have been out there for years that do address some of the symptoms of the disease. But that's the other reason you need to talk about it. You need to make sure that your physician knows if there's a problem with one of your loved ones or a friend or a neighbor, because it can be addressed. And like I said earlier, it may not be Alzheimer's.
Right,
It may
right.
be something that's easy to fix.
Yeah, and so one of the important things, I mean, you said so many important things today, but we're going to have to close, but educate yourself. Go to alz.org and educate yourself. I've been educating myself on lots of things right now. And I finally found a doctor. I switched family practice doctors just a few months ago, and I've got a female doctor now, and she actually listens to me, and she doesn't act like she's in a hurry, and so she talks to me. And she's made some good suggestions, but you need to know as much as you can about your own body and your own conditions where you can communicate and ask questions, because once you ask a question, they're going to need to answer it or find out the answer for you. So educate yourself. You can do that. Be sure and contact your congressman, your senators, your local reps. Be sure and do that. A lot of midterms and primaries and general elections coming up in August and November. And so be sure and do that because they need your vote, they need your support, and you need their support, okay? So very good. Well, we're glad that we were here today. We hope that you enjoyed it. Last thing, 4321 ACTS, ACTS @gmail.com. I would love for you today, 4321 ACTS @gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about our show today. What do you want us to talk about next? And we will try to do that. Ask us a question, send us a question, send us a comment. We would love it. The Acts Ministry Group would love to hear from you. Anyway, you all have a great rest of the week, and we'll be back next Wednesday.
Thank you.
God bless.
We're the United States of America. Unity and oneness is what we're made of. One nation under God, it's plain to see. We're showing the whole world